Half a mile off the coast of Northern California, Año Nuevo Island has always been more than a little jagged, fog-shrouded death trap for passing ships, a reality that became entirely unacceptable during the frenzy of the California gold rush, when cargo steamers routinely smashed into the island's hidden reefs. To tame that danger, the US government stepped in, constructing a lighthouse, a powerful steam foghorn, and a mansion for the keepers. And for decades, this critical outpost was managed 24/7 by keepers who constantly battled the isolation and Pacific storms. Yet by the mid-20th century, they completely surrendered, pulling out every last worker and leaving the multi-story mansion to rot. So what drove the US government to build a multi-million-dollar outpost just to abandon it a few decades later? And why has it since been invaded by seals? Stay tuned to find out as we discover the bizarre history of Año Nuevo Island. I'm your host Ryan Socash, and you're watching Its History. To understand how this tiny island became such a vital part of California, and not really in a good way, we first need to discuss the sheer chaos of the California gold rush. In the mid-19th century, San Francisco was booming, and the coast was flooded with steamships carrying fortune seekers and millions of dollars of cargo. And in that context, there was a deadly problem. The stretch of coast between Monterey and San Francisco was a total blind spot, frequently choked by a thick marine layer. Navigating by sight alone, captains routinely miscalculated, tearing their hulls open on the island's jagged reefs. The breaking point came in 1853, when the clipper ship, Carrier Pigeon, smashed into the shoals on its maiden voyage. From there, a string of other high-profile disasters followed, such as the total wreck of the Koya in 1866, which claimed 26 lives. So, as you might imagine, the shipping industry was terrified, and insurers demanded action. However, answers were not in abundance. The fog was so dense here that traditional light beams couldn't always pierce it. So the US government realized that it needed to set up both visual and acoustic defense systems. Hence, in 1872, they installed a cutting-edge, steam-powered fog whistle. This was no ordinary whistle. It was a full-scale industrial operation. It required a massive brick coal house, water tanks, and giant steam boilers that could be fired up instantly. Though once everything was in place, the results were immediate. The sound was so deafening that it could be heard from miles away, finally giving sailors that acoustic map of the danger zone. To finish the outpost, in 1890, engineers returned to build a lens lantern light tower. Right next to it, they built a beautiful two-story Victorian home for the light keepers and their families. At its peak, this keeper's house was a busy, fully functional home built atop a barren rock. Because two separated families had to share the island, the government elected to build a spacious 9-room addition in 1905. Inside, the house had everyday comforts like hardwood floors, wood-burning stoves, and cozy parlor rooms, whereas outside, the keepers went to extreme lengths to make the island feel like a normal home. They built chicken coops, grew small vegetable patches, and put up sturdy wooden fences around the property. But these fences weren't just for decoration. They were the frontline defense in a bizarre, ongoing turf war. You see, during the winters, great white sharks and killer whales patrolled the channel to hunt. With predators in the water, a safe haven for seals was hard to come by. So when pods of orcas arrived, panicked sea lions and seals, they didn't just stay on the beach, they fled deeper inland. To seek structural protection, they would bash right through the windows and doors of the keeper's house. So in that context, from day one of human habitation, the island's aggressive sea lions constantly tried to enter the keeper's property. In fact, things got so out of hand that in 1916, a keeper complained to national newspapers that the moment he opened his front door, sea lions would try to march straight into his kitchen. Meanwhile, the rest of the colony would surround the house at dinner time, barking loudly for admittance. So it's also probably safe to assume that sleep in this house was hard to come by, between the constant barking and the seasonal mating calls. Anyhow, everything changed in the 1940s when technology rendered the light keepers obsolete. With the invention of automated buoys and advanced radar systems, the US Coast Guard realized that it no longer needed to pay the families to live on that lonely, dangerous rock. And so it was, in 1948, the keepers packed up their belongings, turned off the manual foghorn, and walked away from the island forever. The mansion was boarded up, and an automated light ran on a timer, so for the first time in nearly a century, the island was left empty. But it didn't stay empty for long. You see, in the midst of this transition, a major ecological comeback was happening along the California coast. For decades, the seals here had been heavily hunted for their blubber. By the late 1800s, elephant seals were almost completely wiped out, with fewer than 100 surviving on a remote island off the coast of Mexico. But after new laws were passed to protect them, the seals began making a comeback, moving further north year after year to find safe breeding grounds. And if you're a seal looking for a safe place to raise a pup, an abandoned island with no humans and plenty of fish nearby is about as good as it gets. With that, the very first elephant seals were spotted on the beaches here in 1955. At first, it was just a few animals, but that small group eventually turned into a massive colony. Without people around to scare them off, the animals began to move right into the empty buildings, as perhaps they always had wished to do. Meaning today, the ground floor of the house, as well as the fireplace, are dominated by 4,000-pound northern elephant seal alpha bulls and nursing mothers who can't climb the stairs. The upper bedrooms have been taken over entirely by the more agile California and Stellar sea lions, and the roof is completely covered by thousands of nesting seabirds. And so it didn't take long for that old keeper's house to become an abandoned mansion completely overrun by wildlife. To further protect the recovering colony, the state of California bought the island in 1958, turning it into a strictly protected reserve, as it remains to this very day. However, in the early days of the takeover, researchers noticed that the massive volume of seals was actually destroying the island's native plants and causing the sandy hills to erode. To fix this, scientists have installed boardwalks and barriers to keep the grounds stable and prevent the house from collapsing under the weight of thousands of animals. Hence, by the 21st century, the island's transformation was complete. The lighthouse station was a ruin, and the keeper's house now belongs entirely to seals. So that's why seals have taken over this little island in California. I really hope you enjoyed the episode, and a special thanks to the viewer who submitted this story idea. If any of you out there have a topic that you'd like me to cover, please use the form linked in the description to send it in, and I'll probably make the episode. Otherwise, as always, this is Ryan Socash, signing off.